The Israel-Gaza war of 2023 once more exposed the moral and intellectual vacuity at the heart of the left. When a bomb hit a hospital, Hamas promptly declared that it had been fired by Israel and that 500 people had died. Now, given that this announcement came from one of the most repulsive and dishonest terrorist organisations on earth, you'd hope that it would be treated with a touch of scepticism. But not a bit of it. The BBC, New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, Jeremy Corbyn, Yanis Varoufakis, Rashida Tlaib, and countless other agitators immediately grasped it as irrefutable proof and published reams of vocal condemnations of Israeli war crimes. That's right. The people who continually lecture us about misinformation regurgitated Hamas propaganda and recast it as the news. Unfortunately, it soon transpired that the rocket had been fired by the Palestinians, Islamic Jihad specifically, and that the casualty figures were a similar fiction. You'd have hoped for contrition, but not a bit of it. There's been not a single retraction or apology from those who pushed this vile smear, effectively a blood libel on the Jews. And the fact that they'd whipped up a tornado of anti-Semitic hate appeared not to bother them a jot. Now, these activists are adamant that they care about humanity and that they want peace. Well, there's an easy way to check that. People who truly desire peace will not overtly favour one side over the other. So we can check the public proclamations of such individuals to check their sincerity. I simply counted up their online activity in 3 distinct categories. How often did they criticise the initial attacks by Hamas? How often did they criticise Israel? And how often did they criticise the ongoing rocket attacks by Hamas? The results were revealing. So let's look at a sample. Ash Sarkar, condemnations of Hamas, 0. Condemnations of Israel, 108. Condemnations of the rocket attacks, 0. Jeremy Corbyn, condemnations of Hamas, 1. A condemnation which also attacked Israel. Condemnations of Israel, 14. Condemnations of the rocket attacks, 0. Yanis Varoufakis, condemnations of Hamas, 0. Condemnations of Israel, 138. Condemnations of the rocket attacks, 0. AOC, condemnations of Hamas, 0. Condemnations of Israel, 19. Condemnations of the rocket attacks, 0. Owen Jones, condemnations of Hamas, 4, though those also condemned Israel as well. Condemnations of Israel alone, 321. Condemnations of the rocket attacks, 0. Rashida Tlaib, condemnations of Hamas, 0. Condemnations of Israel, 46. Condemnations of the rocket attacks, 0. Jonathan Cook, condemnations of Hamas, 0. Condemnations of Israel, 212. Condemnations of the rocket attacks, 0. Femi, condemnations of Hamas, 0. Condemnations of Israel, 39. Condemnations of the rockets, 0. Dr. Shola Moshogbamimu, condemnations of Hamas, 0. Condemnations of Israel, 12. Condemnations of the rockets, 0. And Jackson Hinkle, condemnations of Hamas, 0. Condemnations of Israel, 486. Condemnations of the rockets, 0. And it's not just the slanted figures, it's the language. With Israel, it's all ethnic cleansing, war crimes and genocide. With Hamas, it's nothing. It's only mealy-mouthed equivocation. And if you're curious, The combined totals are 5 condemnations of Hamas, which all come with the caveat of, yeah, but Israel are killing people too, and 1,395 outright condemnations of Israel. And you could add several hundred more to that figure, since I've done the maths. It's not just the activists, though, because the lovies had to dip their oar in too. 2,000 of them signed an open letter. These included Tilda Swinton, Charles Dance, Steve Coogan, Maxine Peake, Miriam Margoyles, Mike Lee, Frankie Boyle, Peter Mullen, and lots of people you've never heard of. We are witnessing a crime and a catastrophe. Israel has reduced much of Gaza to rubble and cut off the supply of water, power, food and medicine to 2.3 million Palestinians. In the words of the UN's Under-Secretary for Humanitarian Affairs, the spectre of death is hanging over the territory. Gaza is already a society of refugees and the children of refugees, now in their hundreds of thousands, bombarded from air, sea and land. Palestinians whose grandparents were forced out of their homes at the barrel of a gun, that's a lie, are again being told to flee, or face collective punishment on an unimaginable scale. Dispossessed of rights, described by Israel's Minister of Defence as human animals, they have become people to whom almost anything can be done. We support the global movement against the destruction of Gaza and the mass displacement of the Palestinian people. We demand that our governments end their military and political support for Israel's actions. We call for an immediate ceasefire and the opening of Gaza's crossings to allow humanitarian aid to enter unhindered. But what's missing from here is any condemnation of Palestinian violence, any criticism of Palestinian rhetoric, or any sympathy for Israeli victims. Now listen, you can have sympathy for the plight of the Palestinians, and you can hold deep reservations about Israeli policy and the extent of their retaliation. And those are views I certainly share. But that isn't what's happening here. What's happening here is that Palestinian crimes and complicity are being dismissed, while Israel has been demonised with the sort of language that should alarm anyone with any knowledge of 20th century history. And what are the consequences of that? Well, Jewish businesses and shops are being attacked. Jewish primary schools are being vandalised. Synagogues have been assaulted too. Palestinian mobs have attacked Jews in the street, all across the world. And this should all be alarming too. Yet these same activists have nothing to say on any of it. These are the people who claim to be on the right side of history, who've long bragged that they would have stood against the Nazis in the Holocaust. Well, here's the real test. And they're not standing against the anti-Semites. They're standing aside. Or worse, they're endorsing them. They're joining in. But why is it that the Jewish state, and that state alone, draws such ire? These are the same people who spent 2 years demanding the continuation of the war in Ukraine. Yet they've demanded a ceasefire in Gaza after 2 days. 350,000 have died in the war in Syria, yet they are silent. Tens of thousands of protesters have been killed by the Iranian government, and they have little to say. The Chinese are committing a genocide against the Uyghur Muslims, and they are mute. But as soon as Jews respond to the worst massacre since the Holocaust, they explode. The outpouring is volcanic. Only Israel provokes this explosive response, this wild pathological loathing, this hysterical and irrational frenzy. It's reflexive. It's not born of any thought, examination or consideration. It's the wailing of an instinctive herd who only ever find a voice to condemn the Jews, just like so many others down through the ages. These people continually say that words have consequences, that rhetoric can provoke violence, but they're oblivious to the fact that the greatest culprits of such behaviour are themselves. This is, of course, to be expected. This is the movement that brushed off the violence of the Jacobins and Communards. This is the movement that defended Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, Castro, North Korea, and the IRA. This is a pattern that never changes. As much as they brag about their moral and intellectual virtues, they always rush to judgment, viewing facts and morals through the warped prism of their own ideology. So they dismiss mountains of verified evidence. They believe the noxious lies of murderous bigots. They spread racist hate. They defend, ignore, and inflame violence. And they never learn. They never change. It never dents their certainty, never affects their arrogance. Some view this story as a watershed, but it isn't. It's just a replay of a sick trait that will be repeated again and again. It will provoke far worse violence to come, and their role in provoking it will never even occur to them. If you're interested in these topics, I've written 2 books called The Tyranny of the Left. They're available on the links below. Please do feel free to pick them up and let me know what you think. And if you want more of this stuff, please like and subscribe. Thank you.